Welcome back to College Football Addiction. Today, we're going to talk about a few things that are completely inexcusable. But first, before I go on a Florida State rant, I do want to shout out FSU's players. They played a heck of a game against Wake Forest. They didn't quit on their coach, their program, their teammates, the fan base, the NIL people that donate, the boosters. Honestly, when everyone else had thrown in the towel on this season, you guys did a great job, and that is commendable. However, I think many FSU fans are still in agreement that regardless of the results for the rest of the year, Mike Norvell has to go. Now, though I think that that's the overwhelming thought, I keep hearing a few, not many, but a few, making some crazy arguments as to why FSU should keep him. They're making some arguments that are completely inexcusable. It's gotten to the point where I can't tell whether these people grew up in North Korea and have been brainwashed into protecting their dear leader, or if Michael Alford is creating alts on the message boards. But it seems some fans are major victims of recency bias and are having amnesia and forgetting just how dire the current situation at Florida State is, especially when you look at the big picture and the full 6 years under Coach Norvell. So let's talk today about these inexcusable arguments that people are making. The first inexcusable thing that I've heard recently was a fan saying it looks like Tony White's defense has turned a corner because of that Wake Forest game. So let's be honest and clear-headed about this Wake game. First of all, the Wake Forest quarterback was terrible. He injured his thumb during the VT game, but before he even injured his thumb, he had 2 touchdowns and 4 picks on the year. After the injury, it was readily apparent that he couldn't throw the ball more than 2 yards down the field accurately. And Las Vegas knew this, which is why they were running up the line daily before the game for a team that was on a 4-game losing streak and a team that was 5-2. They knew what was coming. So yes, Tony White did know that Wake Forest was going to be completely one-dimensional. And to his credit, he did exactly what anyone would have done against a one-dimensional team. He loaded the box, he shut down the run, and he deserves credit for that. But this wasn't the first time that we had done that. We did the same thing against Miami. He shut down the run and tried to make them one-dimensional. The problem with Miami was they had another dimension. They could throw the ball. And so can every team FSU has on their schedule for the rest of the year. So we may want to give it another week or two before we officially declare whether or not Tony White's defense is improving. There are quarterbacks remaining on the schedule who can throw the ball further than 2 yards down the field accurately. Another inexcusable thing that I've heard recently is we need to keep Mike Norvell and spend more money on the roster in NIL. Don't even get me started on this dumb crap. First off, FSU isn't poor. Depending on the source, it's estimated that FSU has a top 15 NIL budget. You know what else we have? We have a major talent advantage over most teams that we're playing. We had a major talent advantage over Virginia, and we lost. We had a major talent advantage over Pittsburgh, and we lost. We had a metric assload of talent advantage over Stanford, and we lost miserably there too. And we're not just talking about this year. Over his tenure, Mike Norvell has a 20-20 record against teams where they played and had the talent advantage. Shout out Clay Fink over at Double Fries No Slaw, our other channel, who does some film for us, for the stat. That's 20 wins and 20 losses against teams that Florida State had more talent than. The bottom line is that the guy cannot win even with having more talent. You know who else had a 50-50 record versus teams with less talent? Billy Napier. So Florida State and Florida State fans have to decide, are you okay with Florida pulling away from FSU? Because that's exactly what it feels like is about to happen. The second point about spending more on the roster in NIL, and this is very important, so listen carefully. The NIL money coming from the revenue share is set. All teams spend the same amount there, and that amount cannot change. Then on the other hand, the money coming from the Battle's End, FSU's NIL collective, is top 15 already. That amount is not a set amount that can change. However, Mike's buyout money is not coming from the Battle's End money. In other words, the university is not adding $12 million saved from keeping Mike to give it to the Battle's End. That's not even possible. Those are entirely different pots of money. And another thing about saving the money. Sure, if FSU keeps Norvell, they save money on paper, but it also costs a lot of money to keep him. How many season tickets do they sell next year? How many people are going to travel to Tallahassee for the games? How is the local economy going to do? I looked at the stands on homecoming versus Wake, and probably 20% of the seats were empty. That's homecoming. And that's perfect weather. And you still have a fifth of the stadium empty. You had seats available for $5 a ticket before the game. Keeping Mike Norvell is a major gamble because 20 to 30% of this fan base is completely done with him already anyway. And they're not coming back until he's gone. They're done beating their heads up against a wall. They are looking at the entire 6 years of evidence and saying, they're done. They're done emotionally investing in this. And honestly, who can blame them? I can't whatsoever. Emotionally investing into a coach who finds a way to lose 50% of the games with a more talented team, it doesn't mean they don't love FSU. It doesn't mean they're not real fans. It just means they have higher expectations than the fans who still support Norvell. Another inexcusable thing I've heard recently is we should wait another year to fire because of how many teams are looking for coaches, or we shouldn't make the change because there's no sure thing. Guys, 25% of SEC teams fired their coach this year. And guess what? The average lifespan of an SEC coach over the last decade is about 4 years. That means what you're seeing this year is going to be the new normal. Every single year, you are going to have multiple major programs like Texas, USC, or Penn State going for coaches. This should not stop you from taking your swing. Your options are either to stick with a coach who loses 50% of the games where they have more talent, or you take a swing. Personally, I'd always take my swing because I think that there are over 30 coaches in the country who could win more than 50% of their games when they have more talent. Just look at the ACC. We have half a dozen coaches in this league that have won more than 50% of their games when they have more talent. Brent Key, Rhett Lashley, Jeff Brom, Manny Diaz, Pat Narduzzi. They're all better than Mike at beating teams that they have more talent than. And the fact that some of this fan base is okay with having a coach who is not able to do so 6 years into it and is still losing 50% of their games to teams that they have a talent advantage over is just sad. The standard that Bobby Bowden built is not being lived up to. And another point is that fans can be happy indefinitely with a new coach every 3 to 4 years. Way more than they can by trying the same things over and over again and failing. Do you remember Einstein's definition of insanity? Insanity is doing the same things over and over again and expecting different outcomes. There are plenty of teams who have replaced their coach every 3 to 4 years just to keep fans interested. This is the new normal, and I think it's going to be required in college football. Look at Florida coaches since Urban left. Muschamp, 4 years. McElwain, 3 years. Mullen, 4 years. Napier, 3.5 years. Florida fans haven't lost interest. But if Florida had kept any of those coaches an extra year, it would have cost them way more money because their fans would have completely checked out. And that's exactly what's happened with Mike Norvell. Like I said, 20 to 30% of this fan base, maybe conservatively there, is done with him. The new normal in college football amongst the top programs is changing coaches every 3 to 4 years until you find the coach that gets you to the CFP. That's just how it's going to be. Bottom line is, firing a coach every 3 to 4 years keeps fans happy and optimistic indefinitely. You're going to hit on some and you're going to miss on others. But good coaches don't take over 4 years to materialize. And I'm going to repeat that for those in the back who may have missed it. Good coaches don't take 4 years to materialize. Who are the best coaches in college football right now? Kirby Smart, materialized in 1 year. Dan Lanning, materialized in 1 year. Kurt Cignetti, materialized in 1 year. Mike Elko, materialized in 2 years. Marcus Freeman, materialized in 2 years. Kalen DeBoer, materialized in 2 years. Lane Kiffin, materialized in year 2. Let me know when one of these coaches goes 2-10. Like we said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different outcomes. Insanity is expecting a coach to become good after 6 years of being mediocre. Insanity is expecting a coaching staff to recruit a top 10 class after 6 years when they've never done it before. Insanity is expecting to live out of the portal. Insanity is keeping a coach who is 2-11 in their last 13 ACC games. Insanity is keeping a coach who loses more than 50% of their games to teams that they have more talent than. Insanity is keeping a coach who is 3-15 in his last 18 games that they've played against Power 4 teams. Another inexcusable thing I've heard recently is that they have to get it right this time or they will suffer dire consequences. Guys, UF hasn't gotten it right in 15 years. Miami hasn't gotten it right in 24 years. USC hasn't gotten it right in 15 years. Tennessee hasn't gotten it right in 2.5 decades. The reality is there are dozens of successful major programs who are struggling to get it right. Everyone can't win, but that doesn't mean you don't try. You've got to try, and you've got to keep trying until you get it right. The harsh reality is that Mike Norvell doesn't deserve any more time. Don't let recency bias fog your mind on this. Look at his full body of work. Look at the full 6 years. Look at the FSU standard. Thank you guys for tuning in to hear me rant on this. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments. And on your way out of here, make sure that you're using the Sleeper app. Our code is CFA. That gets you a 100% match up to $100. Appreciate Sleeper for their support. I also threw my email down in the bottom. If you're going to the Clemson game, I'm doing a small tailgate. Anybody that wants to come is welcome. Emails at the bottom for more details. Thank you guys, as always, for tuning in to College Football Addiction.